the mighty Mississippi and all its possibilities, as discovered by French explorers, gave rise to St. Louis, the gateway to the West. Understanding the extraordinary river and all that lies ahead upstream has come a long way since the Lewis and Clark expedition. The Lewis and Clark statue, submerged in rising water, is a reminder of forces that are unstoppable. Making the unpredictable predictable is what drives the National Weather Service to develop advanced technologies for river forecasting. People who live and work in river cities like Grafton, Illinois, pay close attention to the flood forecast. As often as the Mississippi overflows its banks here, it's a forecast the town relies on.
They overshoot it a little bit, and then they always tend to back it down, which is kind of nice as a business owner when it's predicted to be in your building, and then you hear a new announcement where it's not.
Forecasting rivers is a tricky business. Hydrologist Mark Fuchs is with the National Weather Service out of St. Louis. He's staying up to date on new river forecasting technologies that make advanced flood predictions more accurate than ever. He also stays in constant contact with emergency managers about what they can expect.
I'm calling to let you all know I've updated the flood stage at Dardenne Creek at St. Peter's.
Dardenne Creek flows through St. Charles County, Missouri, into the Mississippi River. Fuchs raised the flood stage of Dardenne Creek at Old Town St. Peter's from 16 feet to 18 feet. Raising or lowering a flood stage is rare. Fuchs says it's been 2 years since he's changed a flood stage anywhere.
They use our warnings as a trigger to do a lot of preventive action around the creek, and they said it ain't happening at 16 or 17. And really not much happens until you get above 18 feet. So they made the request to move it from 16 up to 18 feet.
Fuchs says it's been a few years since Dardenne Creek flooded at 16 feet. That's because of improvements along the creek, starting with this agricultural levee.
They've raised this levee at least a foot or two. And what used to be a big problem isn't so big anymore.
And the city improved the creek's drainage pipes, repairing a flap gate. Yet the flood stage stayed the same. So flood warnings were issued when nothing was happening, causing a new set of problems.
If you put out too many of those and nobody's noticing a problem, people will start ignoring the warnings. And we want the warnings to mean something.
This portion of the levee in here is actually a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers levee.
St. Peter's Director of Emergency Management, Ed Gillum, is relieved the city can now receive flood warnings for an accurate flood stage rather than make arrangements to keep venues open by ignoring National Weather Service flood warnings. Ignore no more.
It did add a layer of communications in there that probably at this juncture was not necessary. Here in the city of St. Peter's, we have 6 separate park venues that are located right along the Dardenne Creek, including a municipal golf course. A lot of the activities that take place are generating a revenue for the park system, and by having the ability to better and accurately predict when we have to close and when we don't have to close allows us to leave those parks open and operational.
It's because of community impacts like this that the National Weather Service has developed new software technology that will one day help communities like St. Peter's even more. It's called flood inundation mapping.
But this is an interesting case. Wildcat Creek at Manhattan, Kansas is very similar to Dardenne Creek at St. Peter's because as the river rises, parks start flooding just like at Dardenne. And as it continues getting up to 24, 25 feet, you'll see residential areas start flooding. And that really helps emergency managers there and could help emergency managers years down the road here in Missouri where to put resources when we see major flooding based on flood inundation mapping.
It will take government funding before maps are developed in Missouri or Illinois. But Fuchs says it's coming. Initially, the software was developed for coastal areas and is just beginning to reach communities in the Midwest.
Here in the Cedar River at Cedar Rapids, Iowa, if the river ever does get above 21 feet again, emergency managers will know if it gets above 24, 25, 26 feet when it goes block by block by block. They'll know exactly where to put their sandbags, where to put their resources, and exactly when to do it as this river climbs.
Flood inundation mapping isn't all that's new. The National Weather Service added a new feature to its website in time for spring and summer floods of 2013. It's a new way of presenting the 90-day extended flood outlook. The data may not be different, but it is easier for people to understand.
But at least we can give them an idea that, you better get ready, because the odds are good that you're going to see at least moderate, maybe even major flooding this year.
The science behind the graphic, a little more complicated than what you can see at a glance.
The river's current stream flow, the current soil moisture conditions, any upstream snowpack, and in the spring that's a huge deal. How much water equivalent is that snowpack, and when that all melts, how high is the river likely to go? And then you add that to any expected precipitation that you might get. We'll take those initial conditions, initialize the model with that, and then run up to 60 or more years of historical precipitation data through the model. Then we'll run statistics on all that and say, how many times did it go above a certain level, how many times did it stay below a certain level, and we'll come up with a 50th percentile.
But this simple online page is really all most people need to know months or weeks in advance.
67% likely that major flooding would happen in Quincy. 34% likely that major flooding would happen at Winfield. So you can just mouse over each point and see what the odds are of getting to that specific level, and it'll tell you.
But you cannot just mouse over any city along the Mississippi, not south of Winfield, that is, including Grafton, Alton, and St. Louis. Nor can you mouse over nearby Missouri River cities such as St. Charles. Due to funding issues, the National Weather Service has yet to complete calibrations of the Missouri River. Completion is still a couple years out, and backwater from the Missouri into the Mississippi makes forecasting difficult.
They could run the model on the Missouri, and it would put out garbage, essentially, because it's not calibrated. Since St. Louis basically involves half of the Missouri River water, and half Mississippi, and a significant part of the Illinois too, but the Illinois is not an issue because that's completed. They really can't do statistical analysis of St. Louis effectively without having the Missouri calibrated. So as soon as that's calibrated, that will not only give us new information on the Missouri, but it will also give us new information on St. Louis, Grafton, Alton, because of the backwater issues there from the Missouri.
Then there's St. Peter's, facing difficulties from Mississippi River backwater.
Along Elm Creek, Dardenne Creek, Spencer Creek, all those feed into the Mississippi and back up when the Mississippi comes way up.
Ed Gillum goes beyond the new 90-day outlook, interpreting other National Weather Service models using Mark Fuchsia's forecasting and guidance, just as he has in years past.
That way, if we can accurately predict what's going to be taking place, we can start taking those steps ahead of time that hopefully saves the citizen and the taxpayer money.
For those reasons, the city of St. Peters was able to keep the Lakeside 370 Park from going under during this latest flooding episode with this 2,000-foot-long sandbag tube along the Mississippi River levee.
There's an expense that's associated with prepping those parklands for that flooding, so it's actually an economic issue for us as well.
The hope is that one day river towns that flood like Grafton could benefit from the long-range flood outlook.
I know quite a few folks in Grafton that probably will appreciate these graphics and look at and may start looking at them on a routine basis, because in a place like Grafton on the Mississippi, they need a little advance notice.
Fuchs says Grafton is a nightmare to forecast. On the other hand, some people who live there say they're tired of the local media always sending cameras to their town, making the flooding look worse than it really is.
Well, I saw on the news, and it looked like the whole town was underwater. Well, that's what happens.
Some businesses may go under temporarily, but typically not all. Nothing like the flood of '93.
They used to say, come hell or high water, Grafton's always open.
The people are resilient time after time, and time is what it will take to make flood forecasts even better. Now that new technology is on the horizon, and there's more to come that's making river forecasting more accurate than ever before. For Innovations, I'm Kathleen Berger.